E.L. Anderson.
Thank you.
A great musician to have here for Heart Eyes, because I think we can say Story Night clearly has heart eyes for you, E.L., because you are the musician who has played almost, I think, every style of show we do. You've been at Porch Night, which was the first show we saw you at. Mm-hmm. Then I think you were at Late Night, and then you were at Flagship a couple of years ago, and now back again tonight. So thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
You've already seen some multi-talents from E.L. here, but he also is an author and a film producer and different things. So after the show, he'll have some stuff in the lobby that you can check out. And we're going to start Act 2, actually. He's going to play live to his music video. So we'll see that at the top of Act 2. Fingers crossed. I am Jodi Eichelberger, the artistic director of Story Night. Thank you so much for being here. Also your host tonight. Our themes this year have all been emojis, and they were inspired by Jump's vast collection of inflatable emojis. So I did very little in picking the themes this year. They were sort of chosen for me because I just had to look at the catalog that Jump has. There were only 5 emojis, and we are doing them. So a lot of them are a little similar. There's a lot of winking eyes and smiling and tongues out, which has been a little bit of a challenge, but we're making it work. Tonight is, of course, heart eyes, so we're focused on the love emoji, and we have a lot of love for our season sponsors, so you'll hear more from them in a little bit, but we do want to thank our season sponsor of several years now, Keenly. Thank you, Keenly. And tonight we also have a show sponsor, and it's their first time sponsoring Story Night, and that is Lisi Bishop Real Estate. Thank you, Lisi Bishop. And we have really big heart eyes for our Story subscribers. Raise your hand if you're a Story subscriber. Look at them all scattered around. I notice most of our Story subscribers seem to sit further toward the back. I'm trying not to take that personally. These are people who subscribe with monthly support to Story Night, and we really appreciate that. It's something that we started back during the pandemic when we were unable to do live shows, and that support kept the company going. Because we weren't really selling tickets, we were doing live web streams, and we just kept going with it, and it's been great. They get tickets to all of our shows. A place where I have often encountered heart eyes is at weddings. And there was a long period of my life, and E.L., I don't know if this is true for you too. Do you play weddings?
No.
Good choice. Good choice. So I was often brought in to sing at weddings. My first wedding that I was the wedding singer, I was 4 years old. It was my grandma's wedding. How they thought... Now, we're going to have a lot of brave people here up on stage tonight who aren't used to speaking to groups of people, and it's a little terrifying for them. And you are also great because you give great energy, you give support to them, and they need that. Otherwise, it would be hard for them to be up here. Now, me, I don't need it. Being on stage is like oxygen for me, and it always has been. As a kid, if someone had a fireplace with a mantle, I was on it, I was doing shows, I was doing possibly sermons as a wise 4-year-old. So there I was on the stage singing for my grandma's wedding. Take my home, Lord, make it your home. Take my song, Lord, make it your song. Take my life, Lord, make it your life. Take it all, Lord, make it yours. Something like that. That was 4-year-old. Then I started doing singing for people who weren't part of my family, and I would usually make the bride select the music. One of the oddest weddings, they were a very young couple. I think they were 16. They had hard eyes for each other in an urgent way. And we were a religious community, if that adds anything to the urgency. So they hired a pastor from Fruitland, and I'm pretty sure he must have been responsible for planting most of the orchards that exist there today, because he was old, very, very old. So the entire ceremony had a certain sense of ponderance. I don't think that's a word, but I kind of like it. Is it working for you? A certain sense of ponderance throughout the evening. One of the most interesting was when we got to the ring ceremony. He was reading from a book of ceremonies, and he started the ring ceremony, take the left hand of the woman and place the ring on the fourth finger, the vows, they did that. And then he turned the page, and there was an alternate ring ceremony, which he also read. Take the left hand of the bride, and they're kind of like, oh gosh, what do you take? Slide the ring off the finger and put it back on. So I'm not sure if the pianist was related to the pastor or not, but she had a similar ponderance about her. The song that they selected, I cannot believe they selected it, is a really old hymn called Walk Hand in Hand with Me. And the tempo was such that I had to breathe between almost every word. And it's already kind of a slow song, so it kind of became walk hand in hand with me. Now, I'd gone to opera school by this point, so it's a little different than my 4-year-old. I gave it a little bass profundo, but it profundoed for a long time. Later, we moved from live music to, it was the time where there were these pre-recorded tracks at like a store called Christian Supply. So they had songs appropriate for religious ceremonies, weddings, that the bride could just buy and hand me the tape. I'd learn the track and they'd play it. This couple, they had really interesting names. I can't remember what the groom's name was, but the song featured 2 names that were not theirs. And it seemed to me, now tell me if you think this is true, it seemed to me that the names of the primary characters in this song were selected only because they rhyme. Jill, she's in love with Bill. Yeah, she's in love with Bill. Bill, he's the same, just the thought of her name sends a chill. Yeah, he's in love with Jill. That was a hard one to get through. But we did it. And you know, I might not have thought that the ceremony was perfect, but perhaps that's one of the things about seeing with hard eyes, is it's not about perfection, it's about taking the whole and appreciating all the nuances and imperfections of our humanness. And you're going to have some of that here tonight in the stories. They may not be perfect, but listen with heart eyes. Integration there. What do they call that? What's the buzzword in our workshops? Cross-sectional? Is that it? Intersectional. There it is. It's intersectional, listening with heart eyes. Not hard eyes, just heart eyes. The format of the show is that we have 3 featured storytellers, curated storytellers, and that's intermixed with a community story slam, which is you. So any of you at any time, visit our friends over at the Slammer booth. Write your name on a little ticket, drop it in there. It should be you that writes your own name on there. Should be. Then you'll have 5 minutes to share your story. We are a PG-13 show, family-oriented, so keep your hard eyes up here, and that'll be good. All right, so I'm gonna bring up our featured storytellers in reverse order of how we will experience them. So, first up is Healing in Translation, Annie Chamberlain. Here she comes. And then we have Hearts in the Mail, Harry Beaulieu. I didn't say that right. Beaulieu. Harry has a fancy name. But first up to the mic is your first featured storyteller, Hearts in Healing, we're saying. And to deliver that story, here she comes, Marnae Walker. Change of programming. Sit down, Nay. Someone made a mistake. How tall are you? First up to the mic, Hearts in Translation, it's Annie Chamberlain.
The great loves of my life are boats, babies, and boards. I said this a few years back on a river trip. We were paddling down the Ruby Ranch section of the Colorado River. It's all flat water, so it's kind of boring, and there's lots of time to talk. Boats, babies, and boards. To me, this sounded great. We were talking about our families and how we got into river running, and right after I said this, there was like this awkward silence. Like, you know that sort of thing in a group where the vibe shifts and you know you've said something wrong, but you're not quite sure what it is? I knew that something in between what I said and what they heard was lost in translation, but I wasn't quite sure what. And finally, one of the women said, oh, for me, it's definitely babies first. Definitely babies first. And it was then that I understood what was lost in translation. That as a woman and as a mom, anytime I talked about love, babies were supposed to come first. There's a hierarchy. And I get it, because the first night that I met my children when they were born in Mexico at home in the water, it was this incredible, heart-bursting love. But so too was the first time that I sliced my paddle through a wave, it crashed over me, and I came out on the other side. Or pretty much every time I feel the river underneath my surfboard. So the first time that I fell in love with boats was on the Salmon River. The family story goes that though I was born down in Twin Falls, I was conceived in Stanley in a little cabin in the woods. So I guess that would make sense to be where I fell in love with boats, which is really to say that that's where I fell in love with rivers. I remember being about 8 years old, and my dad would put me in front of him on the inflatable kayak, and we would paddle through on the main salmon right there through Stanley. And we would get to the takeout, and my dad would say, "Hey, Annie, take your life jacket and your paddle and go stand out up on the road, put your thumb out, and we'll get a ride back up to the puddle." So this was the 80s. So little 8-year-old me with my bright blonde hair would get my life jacket and my paddle, and I'd stand out on the road with my little thumb out. And like, of course, the first car would stop, and my dad would jump out from behind the tree that he was hiding behind and get in the car, get the ride back up to the puddle, and come down and get me. I love rivers so much that I would follow them pretty much anywhere. And eventually, I got good enough to do competitions and travel internationally. And I remember being on this river in Spain and coming around the corner, and there was this golden light behind the trees, and the light was shining down onto the river. And it was then in that moment that I knew that love was in nature. It was like a mandate from the universe that love was in nature. And a few months later, I was paddling on the Payettes. I used to river guide up there, and we were hanging out in the shade of the big trees there at the Bank Store and Cafe. It's that spot that you pass on the way up to McCall. And there was a guy there named Grant Amaral. And Grant Amaral is known because he wrote the book on kayaking called Idaho, the Whitewater State. And he said to me, "Hey, Annie, why don't you come down and guide kayak trips for me in Mexico this winter?" Which was an invitation that, of course, I jumped at, and that began the next chapter of my life. I fell in love with Mexico. The food, obviously, the rivers, the warmth of the people, the culture, and this beautiful language all had me enraptured. And for the next 10 years of my life, I would spend as much time in Mexico as I spent in the United States. And so first I went down there to guide kayak trips, and then later I went to school. And so I guess it was natural I was spending so much time there that I would meet a man and we would have children and start a family down in Mexico. And being pregnant in Mexico is an amazing experience. I felt like I was a queen, because when you're walking down the street in Mexico, and you're pregnant, the elderly women would come up to me and kiss my belly and give it blessings. People walk to the side when you're walking down the sidewalk, or they offer you their seat on the bus. And they also give you a lot of information about what you should and shouldn't do when you're pregnant. And there was a lunar eclipse. It was the winter of 2008. And my mother-in-law showed up at my house a few nights before the eclipse, and she gave me this big safety pin, and it had a red ribbon on it. And this was for me to pin onto the inside of my underwear to wear during the eclipse to protect me and the baby. And luckily it worked, because Elena was born a few months later at home in the water. And when I pulled her up out of the water, I felt this heart-bursting love, like my heart broke into a million pieces to make room for this bigger heart. And a few years later, her brother, Joaquin, was born also at home and in the water and under a full moon. And Joaquin one-upped the whole thing in classic Joaquin fashion by also being born in his bag. And there's a lot of lore throughout Mexico and the world about babies who are born in their own bag. There's a sort of magic to a baby when it's born in their own bag. And a couple other interesting things about his birth is that I was I was closing my eyes during contractions, and suddenly I saw this big radiating, pulsing sun. And I didn't know the sex of this child that I was about to have. Both of the kids were surprises. And so when he was born, I gave him the Huichol middle name of Tao, which means sun. And the Huichol are the native people of the part of Mexico where they were born. And I didn't know the sex, like I said, I didn't know the sex of this child. So when I was, right before, I was meditating on this radiant sun, about to have my son. I was in one of those places in labor where you're just so tired and so exhausted, and I just thought to myself, why do I always have to do things the hard way? And the universe answered, and it said, sometimes love is the hard way. I didn't need that lesson just then, but I have needed it since. One of the best things about spending so much time in Mexico is that I got really good at speaking Spanish. And after a lot of work and a lot of studying, I became a Spanish court-certified interpreter. And becoming a court-certified interpreter is really tough because it's not just about being bilingual, but it's also about being able to hear one language in one ear and then speak a different language, sometimes at the same time. And there's a statistic out there that like less than 10% of people who take the court certification oral exams pass on the first try. And I did not pass on the first try. I had to take it several times, but eventually I did pass. And working in the criminal legal system in any capacity is sometimes really tough work. As interpreters, we do everything from traffic cases to DUIs to homicides. We sight translate people's victim impact statements. We see the fallout of substance abuse disorder and mental health crises. But for me, the hardest thing about interpreting is that we do what's called direct translation. So if I, as the interpreter, need to be heard, I say, and for example, Your Honor, the interpreter can't hear the witness. I talk about myself in the third person. But when the person that I'm interpreting for needs to be heard, like for example, they might say, Su Señoría, yo lo hice. I say, Your Honor, I did it. I use the first person narrative. I act as the voice of the person that I'm interpreting for. Sometimes when I'm interpreting, I hear echoes of my own stories, the stories in between the boats and the babies and the boards. She says, me trata mal. He treats me poorly. She says me trata mal because it's easier to say than abusar. Él es abusivo. He's abusive. She says me trata mal because it softens the sharp edges of what it feels like to be so worn down from the gaslighting and the fighting and the energy that it takes to shield the children from it all. She says me hace tener relaciones cuando no quiero. He makes me have sex when I don't want to. She says, I just want a divorce and for all of this to be over. I have strategies that I use so that even though I am her voice in this moment, I am no longer her. Me recuperé. I reclaimed myself. And sometimes it's an ongoing reclamation. I imagine a big, beautiful blue bubble. I take a deep breath and I sight translate her victim impact statement. I hold her in the bubble with me. Because often in between, again, the boats and the babies and the boards, life keeps happening. Loved ones struggle with substance abuse disorder or suicidality, and it's tough, but sometimes love is the hard way. So I hug my children. I go to the river and I find love in nature. I spend time with them, and sometimes I love people in my life from a distance when I have to. But a life built on different kinds of love and different types of love is a beautiful life, a sturdy life. The kids and I have dogs and a big backyard. We have friendly neighbors and amazing friends. We have a few boats and baby chickens and a lot of surfboards. And all of this is in spite of what they say about how miserable it is to be a single mom. There's a lot of things I've really loved about being a single mom. One of them is that it's taught me to live and love in community, in a circle that's bigger and maybe has a funkier shape than I might have imagined. But so often we are given proof that we are loved and that love is also in community. And maybe it's not a circle at all, but more like a river with big waves, deep pools, rough sections, and places of reflection. Golden light in the trees behind the river, and long stretches of flat water where we tell stories about who brought the magic to keep the babies safe, and the babies that brought the magic to keep us safe. The ability to move between the first and third person, and love that's never lost in translation.
Thank you, Annie. And look, we're kind of in a blue bubble right now. Not quite a circle. Now, you sort of, when you were mentioning your offspring, you kind of made a gesture over in this direction. Is there someone over there? There they go. Stand up for a second. Here they are. Oh, wow. Wow, born in the water in Mexico under a full moon. That does sound beautiful. My mom is actually here tonight. I caught her eye back there. I was not born in Mexico. Where did she go? Oh, okay, she's ducking. Oh, she moved. I was not born in Mexico in water under the full moon in my own bag. I was born in Vandenberg Air Force Base. And it took 3 days, and they eventually used forceps. Apparently no one told me there would be a stage. So, all right, speaking of coming to a stage, we're gonna bring one of you up on stage now, so if I can get that slammer box up here. And remember, any of you can go over there and put your name in at any time for a 5-minute story on the theme, Heart Eyes. I'm gonna time you. If you start going a little long, I'm gonna come up close to you with my little eyes. Oh wow, we got a lot here. Kind of blink in your face or something awkward. Okay. This is a person who has actually hosted our show before. That's a very elite group of people, let me tell you. So please welcome Haley Lenhart-Weiss. The long way around.
Gentle? What? I'm just, all right, hello. Hi. I have hosted. That was a late night. We're doing PG-13, so everybody calm down. Heart Eyes makes me think of the cartoon characters that see something like, that stuff, right? Which reminds me of me growing up as a little kid. I don't know about you, but I watched too many romantic movies as a young child. I was like, princesses? Oh my gosh, married after yes, I'll meet you. That'll be great. I felt like romance was the coolest thing when I was a young kid. So much so that I might have kissed a few boys it was fine. I was 4, I don't remember, but apparently I was a monster. They were like, Haley, consent, girl. So I apologize to all. I was 4. Okay, we're moving past it. Anyways, but I really loved the idea of love when I was younger, so much so that I was like, I'll get my parents back together. You ever try to parent trap your parents? Guess what? It doesn't work. No, I'm just kidding. But I did love, and so much so that my older sister, used it against me, that devil. She decided that, actually, her and my older cousins decided that, hey, you know what's funny is Haley has a young little bridesmaid's dress from her aunt's wedding, and my cousin McCall had a little tuxedo from a different wedding, and they're like, what if we made our cousins marry each other? You know, backyard fun, really good stuff. Some back history, my sister also made my older cousin marry the toilet, so she was obsessed with marriage. Completely obsessed with marriage at a young age. I don't know what happened. But instead of my grandparents intervening, they're like, this is a great idea. And they were the photographers. So if anyone wants to see my wedding album, I have it. It's not a legit marriage, but it's fine. I swear that was as far as it went. It was like, I do. And I was like, I'm married! Finally, a grown woman. That was at 6, my bad. I did eventually get married with consent, and he was older. It's been good. But I definitely don't have the heart eyes. I have more of the worry face towards him. Anyone else love each other? Like, so it's funny that like hard eyes assembled love to y'all, because I'm like, it's like, and then love is. Sorry, you can't see me. That's why I was like, this is fun. You ever done comedy in the round? I'm just kidding. This isn't comedy. Well, that was basically the story. I don't have any other stories except for. Nope. Well, that was fun. Can I do less than 5 minutes? Okay, good. Because in my history, love is short and sweet. You know what I mean? Like a kiss here, a kiss there. You don't need to do all the tongue stuff. You know, it's just brush your teeth more, love each other. All right, have a good day.
And Haley, please visit our Slammer booth to sign the wedding registry, which we also use for the release for our podcast and our socials and channels and stuff. Actually, that was so short and sweet, I feel like doing another Slammer right now. I caught them off guard. They're like, whoa, we're going to do another Slammer right now. That's not on the template. I know. That's how much power I have. All right. Very unusual in the first act to have 2 slammers. And now we're going to move, well, this might be a former Slammer of the Year. She's being quite humble because it just says Jean C, and I'll know in a second if it's the Jean that I know. Jean? It's Jean Cardenio! 2025 Slammer of the Year. No pressure, Jean.
I get to volunteer for a local hospice provider, and usually I provide respite for the caregivers or companionship for the patients themselves. But last summer, I got to start walking Louie, a 90-pound, 9-year-old black Labradoodle whose mom could no longer walk him. And the 3 of us bonded immediately. But 2 months into it, after I was out of town for about a week, I messaged Louie's mom and didn't hear back from her. And this just happened to be the same day as Slammer of the Year, so September 30th. And when I got home that night, I had an email that said that Louie's mom had passed away that afternoon. And I didn't get to say goodbye to either of them. And that grief left me not knowing what I needed or what to do. But a week later, I found myself driving to their house, and I knew they wouldn't be there, but I knew it was what I was needing. And on the front step was a vase full of yellow Gerber daisies. And I just thought, oh, someone left her flowers. But the flowers weren't for her. The note said, to the friends of, and I'm not gonna use her name, Louie's mom, please take a flower and know that she lives on in you. And it just hit me so hard how much she was loved and that I wasn't the only one missing her. But a couple months ago, on January 24th, my friend Amanda died. And even though she had stage 4 breast cancer, we all thought we had much more time with her. She had just started a new chemo, and 2 weeks prior to her death, she was at a show I was in at the Sapphire Room. So she wasn't bedridden, she wasn't on hospice. And again, that grief left me not knowing what I needed or what to do. But after a few days passed, I decided to do for Amanda what someone had done for Louie's mom. So I ran down to the Idaho Youth Ranch. I grabbed a big glass pitcher for $3. And I felt a little silly, but I brought it down to the Trader Joe's and took it in. And I grabbed 3 bunches of Gerber daisies and filled the pitcher up with the drinking fountain in the back. And when I got up to the register, I just plopped it down on the counter. And the cashier said, should we unwrap the flowers right now? And I said, oh, that'd be great. And you know how they usually ask you what you're getting up to that day? Somehow I turned that around on her, and I think she said she was a communications major at Boise State, so we talked about that. And then I asked if maybe I could cut the flowers too. And she grabbed me some scissors. And then this other woman who was walking by, who also worked there, asked, what's going on? And that's when I told them that my friend had just passed away, and I was going to leave the flowers on her front step in case friends passed by, they could pick up a flower. And then I don't know how they did this without me noticing, but then the cashier turned to me and said, "We're going to give you 2 more bunches on the house." And I said, "I'm going to cry." And then the other woman brought me some roses and carnations, and then I cried. The next morning, I brought those flowers to Amanda's viewing, and they went off with her. And then those ladies doubled down, and they brought over some yellow and red tulips and said, "And these are for you." That grief that I was falling into, where I didn't know how or when or if I was ever going to land, just like that turned into falling into and being submerged in gratitude, because I got to witness humanity just spring into action. And I didn't even get their names, and I don't think I'd even recognize them if I saw them again. They were so blurry through all the tears. But they reminded me that I'm not in this alone, that Amanda wasn't in this alone, that her community isn't in this alone, and clearly that I should shop more at Trader Joe's. Thank you.
And this show is not sponsored by Trader Joe's, but we welcome them. We welcome. If anyone here has an in, happy to have them as a sponsor. One of my favorite quotes from Surprised by Joy by C.S. Lewis is how all those happy moments that we have also are part of the future grief. And I've misquoted it. It's a beautiful quote. I'm sure you can find it on Google. Or AI. Surprised by Joy. Now we're going to be surprised, not really surprised, but because it's our second featured storyteller, so we know what's going to happen. Please welcome, for the first time on the Story Night stage, Harry Beaulieu.
There's a pool table behind me, and there's kids everywhere, and they're loud. It's so loud, and some of them are just big, big, big energy, and some of them are lonely, and some are loud and obnoxious, but these are our kids. It's 1997, and it's the Boys and Girls Club of Ada County, and I'm there as a volunteer. It's tough to have 60 kids after school and to keep them happy. So I'm freshly divorced, and I'm trying to find my way and to get grounded, and I think about what's important to me, and I thought, well, I like to help people, and I love children, so I'm a volunteer here at the Boys and Girls Club, and maybe 3 to 4 hours after work, and probably 3 to 4 days of a week, and it was great. Over in a corner, there's this young lady that's looking really, really uncomfortable. I put her about 9, just really anxious, and I looked at her and I thought, oh, but there's Alice, and Alice is 9, and she settled up to me, and in tow, I took Alice over to this girl, and I said, do you suppose you could teach me how to play pool, because I don't know how? And she looked at me and said, well, I'm not very good, but I'll try. Precocious Alice jumps in and says, we'll teach them together. Okay. And so the 3 of us played pool for, maybe 10 minutes, and I could see that they were bonding, and everything was great, and so I kind of just slipped away. Years later, Melanie told me that Alice was her first best friend at the Boys and Girls Club, and it was great. So I had a business protecting the health of workers. It's called industrial hygiene, and I had an emergency in the north part of Chile, and this is workers in a gold mine, which is the refinery part of it, and it was exposure to mercury, which is a nerve toxin, and cadmium, which causes kidney cancer. So I dropped everything, and I went into travel mode. Now, the flight to Santiago is long, and I'm sitting there and it's quiet, and I pull out this letter that had been dictated from my guardian angel, Ines. And Ines was in hospice now. She was 90 years old, and she wrote a letter to me, and I'm finally reading it, and it's kind, it's compassionate, it's positive, and I got this revelation, holy schmoly, I like to get mail. And then I thought to myself, these kids have never had mail. And so I worked for about a week in this refinery, and at the end of the time, I was starting to pack up and go, and then I said, well, Copiapo, I'll go find 6 postcards, llamas, alpacas, dolphins, and so I found international stamps, and I wrote them out and took the time to get them into the mail and went home, and maybe 4 days later or so, it was time to go back to the club, and so I started trying to taunt the kids. I said, do you ever get mail? Does anybody ever here get mail? And just no response at all. Until about 2 weeks later. And I was getting hustled by these pool sharks. These 2 little guys, right? Jake and Sam. And all of a sudden there was this shout from the front desk, pool sharks, get up to the front desk. You got mail from South America. And the kids looked at each other and they looked at me, and before they could move, she bellers out again and she says, and 4 young ladies, you know who you are, up to the front. And so everybody started to move up to this front, and the supervisor was starting to taunt them with the 4 postcards up in the air like this. And it wasn't just the 6 and 7 of us now, but it was about 30 kids. And let me see, what did you get? You got a llama. Yeah. and it was just really fun. So there was 6 beaming faces, but there was a lot of disappointed faces too, right? So that night I went home and I started a list. And the idea was, well, I could come up with some first names, and so I started a list of these additional kids. Well, the next day a child would come up to me and said, well, can I have a postcard, Mr. Harry? They called me Mr. Harry. And I said, of course you can. So that started this whole thing about looking for postcards and writing postcards. Well, one long airplane flight, I was writing postcards frantically and trying to get them done before landing somewhere. And a flight attendant came by and she said, what are you doing? and so I explained to her, and she said, well, you know, I travel internationally. I travel all over the place, and I pick up postcards just like I guess you do, but I've never done anything with them. And I thought, okay, and I kept writing postcards, and about a half an hour later she came back again, and she had this sack of about 100 postcards from all over the world, and she said, I think you can make better use of this than me. And so I thanked her profusely, and that was great. So this went on, and I would keep trying to find postcards, and then it was time, however. It was out of control. I got a stamp. It said Boys and Girls Club of Beta County, bloom, and then I would write the kid's name. And I also had to keep record of what child got what when, because they knew, and they knew who got a postcard and who didn't get a postcard. Okay. Oh, so it was fun. Okay. Can you jump forward? No, there's one thing first. So this list of 6 now grew into 64 within about 2 months. So I got this list of 64, and this went on for about 2.5 years, and it was wonderful. I love these children, and we were Mr. Harry, they called me. Well, I'm sorry, I lost track here. Oh, I got a grandson that saves me at the last minute. It's November 16th, 1997, and this young man, Braden Crane, was born. And he saved me, right? And I'm going to spend all my time with my grandson. So there isn't any more trips, hardly at all, to the Boys and Girls Club. It stopped, and that was that. But go jump forward 20 years, okay? And I'm in my office, and the support person buzzes on the intercom. Harry, you got a call from Melanie. And I said, I don't know any Melanie. And about 30 seconds later, she came into my office and said, listen, this one, I think you really, really ought to take this call. Grudgingly, I said, okay, and I picked up the phone, and she said, this is a woman's voice, and she said, you may not remember me, but, and she said, a long time ago, you let me read to you at the Boys and Girls Club. I'm Melanie. And I said, no, Melanie is 8 years old. She said, no, I'm 28 years old, and I have a little girl that's 8 years old, and she comes to the Boys and Girls Club, and I work there, and there's another woman named Alice is there as well. But anyway, what's important is that I want to give you an invitation to come back to the club. I want you to meet my little girl, and we're going to have a party. Monday at 5 o'clock, I'd like you to be there. And I said, meteor from outer space? Yes, okay, I'll do it. Monday rolled along, and I pulled into the park. You got to watch for kids, bicycles and scooters, and so I made my way to the front desk, and this woman jumped up, and she came over and gave me this big hug, and she said, Mr. Harry, you haven't changed a bit. And I looked at her, and okay. And she said, I'm Melanie. You remember? And I said, well, kind of. And then she grabbed my hand, and she said, would you come over here, please, and walk me in front of these chairs and sofas, and said, this is where you would sit and listen to me reading. Now, I was pretty dramatic, wasn't I? And I said, yeah. And then she pulled over to another little area, and there's a little folding table with punch and cookies and a poster that said, welcome back, Mr. Harry. and there were kids around, and we were laughing and talking, but then I realized they were herding me over to here. And here's this wall, about 8 by 10, and I looked up, and holy schmoly, Roadrunner, Alligator, Seattle, Mexico, New York. These are postcards that were up on the wall, and there was about 100 of them. And I just beside myself, and Melanie grabbed my hand and said, Mr. Harry, now just listen. And she pulled one down, and she read it, and it said, Dear Jake, you are a natural-born leader, and the little kids look up to you. And I know that you're going to be a good role model for them. Go, Jake. Mr. Harry. What's the capital of Oregon? Be kind, respectful, and patient. But almost everyone had a closing on the end of it that said, make good choices. Oh, so anyway, it was wonderful, just a flood of emotion. I made my way out to the car, and I was just beside myself, and I had to breathe, and I had to close my heart eyes. And I thought to myself, what just happened? Well, you know, I still write postcards, family and friends, and I maybe 10 or maybe even 20 in a month. And I love to travel. I love to travel for pleasure, and I'm always on the lookout for interesting postcards, and I'll buy a fistful of them. Well, probably maybe too many. No, just enough.
So behind me right here is an idea I wish I'd thought of. Nay is just passed over some new postcards to Harry. Too many, no, just enough. Now, there was a moment in that story, and I just want to check, could everyone hear this? That the character in the story named Braden said something in the room? Was that just me that heard that? Or did you all hear that? It was just me. Oh, okay. Well, much like in our other story where we had some characters appear, you're grandson Braden, right? Stand up and wave at everybody. So if your kids are at the Boys and Girls Club right now, he is responsible for Mr. Harry not sending them postcards. His fault. Well, I'm so glad all of you have traveled here tonight. Although, be honest, how many of you are out there wearing a wristband and think you're at Tree Fort? A couple of you, yeah. I thought so, I thought so. Well, here's something you probably didn't hear at Tree Fort. It's the show sponsor message. Not one of my best segues, I have to admit. Lisi Bishop Real Estate has been rooted in the North and East End for over 3 decades, serving as local advocates and trusted real estate advisors. Lisi began her professional life here, raised her children here, and now enjoys watching her grandchildren grow up here as well. As neighbors, friends, community members, and local experts, we are proud to continue investing in the people and places that shape this beautiful city. We are thrilled to support evenings like this and the creative arts that bring so much life and vibrancy to our community. Thank you to Lisi Bishop Real Estate. And this just in, we have some new fresh product out in the lobby, some very spiffy t-shirts that have the Story Night logo. Yes, you can model that for us. Thank you very much. Beautiful. We also have some tote bags, and it's just like we're in Mexico, isn't it? Tote bags and stickers and books, and those are available out in the lobby. Thank you. We're going to take about a 10-minute break before our next act, and I just spotted EL, so I'm glad to see he's still in the room because I was thinking he was going to play some music during the break. So refresh your drinks, check out our merch table out in the lobby back there, and we'll see you back here in about 10 minutes for Act 2.
they won't even try, 'cause this love's gonna take them high. But oh, I ask, what could be better than two hearts together, maybe forever. They're feeling something deep and strong, something they have felt for so long. The love they share will be apart, a fixing up their broken hearts. It's the start of a brand new day. Nothing's gonna get in their way as long as they have each other. 'Cause in a uniform of love, they've got more than enough, drawing strength from one another. Share is pure and strong, and it'll stay with them for so long. They will never be apart, because they fix their broken heart. They'll never be alone, no, 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 no. They'll never be alone, because they fix their broken heart.
E.L. Anderson!
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
It was this song, Hearts, that made me think of inviting E.L. tonight. And can I give you this shirt? Would you take this shirt?
Yeah, can't guarantee it's gonna fit, but I'll take it.
Well, you can wear it tight like a sausage. Don't people wear tight clothes? Isn't that? No, well, it is looking a little suspicious, isn't it?
It's okay.
It'll fit the clarinet.
Yeah.
All right, let's invite our featured storytellers back on stage, please, wherever you've all landed. Welcome back. And then as you're coming up, we're going to go ahead and start with a story slammer. So if we can get the slammer box, we have a lot of Heart Eyes stories. It's actually good that we featured your video there. Obviously, locally done, local actors, local sites. Oh, and by the way, our thank you for my Heart Eyes. She just gave to me. Apparently, they came from Treefort. Is that right? Okay. Wow. There's a lot of Heart Eye stories in here. So far, we've kind of really avoided most of the romance stories. Yes, thank you. We've kind of avoided a lot of the romance stories so far, so it's kind of fun to explore all the different things that Heart Eyes can see. This is a very romantic name, however, so we'll see what we get. Please welcome to our stage, Moon Tucker. Everyone can see that there's a dog there, right? It's not just me.
Yes. So it's 2010, I lose my arm. 2012, I think it might be a really good idea to see if I can learn to shoot archery. So I go in, take my brother, big guy, Haas from Bonanza. I'm dating myself, right? Haas, big guy. Go in, we go up to the counter, all the bows. Guy walks up and he's like, "What can I do for you?" And he's like, "Not me, her." So he looks and he's like, "All right, what can I do for you?" I said, "Well, I'd like to learn to shoot archery." He goes, "You shot before?" I said, "No." He goes, "Well, do you know your draw length?" It's like, "No." "Ma'am, there's a 2-hand minimum for archery." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." I was like, oh, okay. So I put archery in this little box of things that I can no longer do because I only have one hand. Goes right next to dishes, laundry. It's a good trifecta going on down there. About a year later, I find myself in California, and I'm working for a prosthetist. They make the artificial limbs. One day, this big old redneck rolls himself into the room, and he's got this ball cap, and if he stood up, he'd be about 6 foot, but he's in a wheelchair, he's missing a leg, missing part of his hand. We roll in, patient waiting room, and he gets to talking, we get to jaw-jacking. He's like, you like to shoot? And I was like, yeah, former military. He goes, no, I mean archery. I was like, told him my story. He goes, you just wait right here. He wheels himself out of that room. He comes in and he's rolling this big 4-foot round target, leans it up against the wall, and he hands me this bow, and he says, okay, so I've taken a dog leash, and I put it, and I sewed it onto the D loop there, right? If you had fingers where you'd be pulling back, but you're not gonna do that. You're gonna put that leash right back between your molars. And I looked at it, and I said, this doesn't look new. He said, just put it in your mouth. Like, all right, curiosity got me. I was like, okay, I gotta try this. So I wedge it back in my back molars, and he's like, just push the bow away, aim it towards the target, and relax your jaw. So I push the bow away, I aim it towards the target, and I relax my jaw. Hard eyes. I was like, oh my God, I'm in so much love with this. This is so cool. So we shot a couple more in the office until my boss kiboshed that. So then he's like, all right, meet me at the range this week. Let's see what you got. So I go to the range, we're shooting off some arrows, and he's like, hey, you don't have any bad habits. And you kind of got some natural skill. He said, I bet if you did everything I said, hold it right there. He's like, let me finish. If you did everything I said, you could be the first woman to represent the United States in the Paralympic Games in 2016. I was like, when is that? He said, about 19 months from now. I said, never shot archery, and you think I'm gonna be on the Paralympic Games? He's like, again, do everything I say. He said, I'm a 3-time Paralympian. I was like, okay, all right, you might know what you're doing. All right, so we start working. 6 months later, I make the national team. Thank you. 8 months later, I make the world team. Thank you. And then, by God, I did earn my spot for the 2016 Paralympics. Thank you. Thank you. And he and I got to shoot together in the games. So we're up on the stage, and we're doing our elimination rounds. We got all the brackets, and this is the day before the medalist rounds. So they have, in this secluded area of the stadium, this stage, 2 archers only, all the way down there, 50 meters down, 2 big, beautiful targets. We get to come up, and we get to shoot 1 quiver of arrows. So I get up on the stage, and it's beautiful. They got this big, beautiful scoreboard, and there's our picture, and our name, and the American flag, and all the stuff. And I no longer shoot mouth tab, because people tend to lose teeth, and I've lost enough. So some of the guys had these strap-on devices where they mounted the release on the shoulder, and you hook on, and they've got like this thing that goes to your chin, and it's like a trigger. So I had one of those, and my anatomy is different than a man's, so that was really, really tricky. And as you know, in anything in life, when there's more parts to fail. So this was just a tricky little device, and it had just been giving me fits. But sometimes it didn't hook really well. I'm on about my 5th arrow. I go and I get it, and it's struggling, and I get it hooked on, and I'm not at full draw. Crap. It fires. I'm at half draw. And all I could think, like everything froze, because you never know where the arrow's gonna land, and there's peoples around. And I'm like, oh, psh, electrical, lights out, sparks, holy God. And I just freeze, and I'm like, I did. I shot out the scoreboard. Oh my God. And then I hear Eminem, you got 1 shot. This opportunity only comes once in a lifetime. And I yell at my coach, I'm like, follow me. Off the stage I jump. I'm running down, because we got Brazilians coming out of orifices of the stadium that I didn't even know existed. and they are not happy. Stuff's coming over the loudspeaker, and I'm run. I throw in my phone, I'm like, take a picture, and I'm like, right next to my arrow, and then the Brazilians are getting close and they're getting loud, and I turn around and I beat feet right back to the stage, and I just popped back up on the stage and I looked and I was like, well, I don't know if they love me, but I certainly left my mark on Brazil.
Moon Tucker. Hey, Moon, would you please visit our slammer booth to sign the bill from Brazil? They still have to repair that scoreboard. I guess my closest example. Oh, by the way, working for a prosthetist. That's a sentence you have to enunciate really clearly. Especially when you're telling a heart eyes story. Working for a prosthetist. I was getting up in my seat, PG-13! Oh, my closest example to that, though, was I played Pinocchio in a stage production. And it was kind of a bizarre production. All of the other characters were tools in a wood shop. So Geppetto was played by an axe, and it was a real old, rusty axe, heavy metal head, and I'm Pinocchio, and I'm manipulating Geppetto, and Geppetto is saying something, and he gets a little excited, and he's saying it, and all of a sudden I see the axe head just fly right off the top over the audience heads and crash into a window on the side of the theater. That's my archery story. All right, we're going to move back to our last featured storyteller. We're super excited to have her here tonight. Please welcome Marnae Walker.
I'm an only child. Comes with its advantages and its disadvantages. One of the biggest disadvantages was that I had to learn how to share. Another one was I really longed for a big family. I wanted a big family. I wanted to know what that was like. I envied my friends who had siblings. It's a little lonely being an only child, just relying on your parents and running around trying to be an adult to get attention. It's lame. So I kind of had a goal of having this big family. When I was 30, I got married and had my first child when we were living in Oregon. And that was my first heart eyes moment. I held him and we locked eyes. It was this instant. His name's Jack, and it was the most awesome feeling. It was my first adult experience with love, and I was really believing in it and receiving it and wanting a lot more. It was awesome. And I was like, Jack is not going to be an only child. I'm going to do this. Well, he was one of those babies that didn't sleep ever. Like, ever. He still doesn't. He's 24. He still does not sleep. I was exhausted, and when he was 10 months old, I had a positive pregnancy test. I was like, okay, what do I do? I really love this. But, so I was on my mission, staying on track, gonna do this. Had complications starting at 8 weeks. Started bleeding. Panicked every time, and there was always a heartbeat. Everything was okay, but the bleeding never stopped. And I just kept getting sicker and sicker, and like this new little love of my life wasn't getting a whole mom because I was so tired. But again, I was trying to balance this, and I was really sure about this. And at 16 weeks, the doctor was like, we're in Oregon. This is kind of like a decision time for you, and you're sick, so you're going to have to go on bed rest. And you need to be on bed rest 23 out of 24 hours a day. And the husband got fired. I'm like, oh. So now he's working at Home Depot, he's doing another job, he's riding the bus. We've got one car, and I'm on bed rest. My parents are flying in. It's kind of crazy. And then this kid who doesn't sleep is not getting this attention. I'm staying on track. I just knew it. And then, when you get to 16 weeks, you see the ultrasound. It's a baby. It's a boy. We named him Nick. So excited about this. This is going to be okay. I'm going to be all right. I don't think that I ever let anybody take a picture of me during that time because I knew it wasn't looking good. And so at 21 weeks, the husband came home, and I stood up to greet him, and it was like a gallon of milk of blood just came shooting out of my body. It was a murder scene. I was in shock. He was in shock. Jack is screaming, my mom's dying. It was horrible. Then the familiar contractions. I was like, oh, no. And, he's like, I can do this, big family, I want this. It was very scary. The husband did a great job, kind of put us in a car, got us to the hospital. We called the doctor met us there. She's like, oh, we get to the hospital. She's petting my forehead. So, Nay, we're not going to have this, we are going to have this baby tonight, but he's not going to survive. You're fired. The husband did a great job again, fired her. Next thing I know, I'm in an ambulance headed to a high-risk hospital. Get out, I'm all woozy. I don't know where Jack is. I don't know where anybody is. I don't know what my name is. I feel disgusting. I don't know what's going on. I hurt. I'm screaming. I want some medicine to stop the contractions. And this doctor comes up and he starts petting my forehead. Hi, Nay. Welcome. We are not going to have this baby tonight. He is going to survive. I'm going to put you on some medication, though, that's going to stop the contractions, and it's going to be horrible. And it was magnesium. And I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that before, but I hadn't. And I was like, my body itched. I was hot. My face hurt. I couldn't see. It was blurry vision. I'm in the ICU, and he goes, okay, here's the plan. We need to get Nick to 27 weeks. We're at 21. If we can get to 27 weeks, he's got an 80% chance of survival with a 20% chance of disability. 26, 20% chance of survival with an 80% chance of disability. All right, you got this? I'm like, we got this. I don't know how, but I got this. So again, can't read, can't watch a show, just waiting for people to come and visit me. Don't even like the food, and all I could do was sing, and I can't carry a tune. It sucked. I hated it. And I was making it through and starting to think maybe I made the wrong choice for a minute. Remembering the hard eyes with Jack. I know I can do this. Can I do this? And in the middle of the night, a nurse comes and she wakes me up and she goes, okay, Nay, we're going to go into surgery. Right now, the baby's in distress. Wait, what day is it? And we had a whiteboard. She's like, oh, no, it's okay. You are 3 hours shy of 27 weeks. Yes, I got this. So you go in, and you don't have the sound with a preemie of crying. So you don't hear anything, you don't know what's going on, everybody's quiet, nobody says anything to you, you don't know what's going on, and then finally I'm like, is he okay? He's okay, he's alive, he's 1.5 pounds, and he's in the NICU, and we're gonna let you see him after a little while. Okay, I go and see him, they wheel me in there. He looks like a bird. He's like a baby bird. He's blue and sticky, and you can't touch his skin, and there's plastic over the top of him, and there's needles in his ankles, and he's got a CPAP machine on, and I'm thinking, oh, what did I wish for? What's going on? And I'm looking at him, and I didn't get the hard eyes moment. I didn't know what to do. I just sat there and was like, oh my goodness. And the doctor said, it's gonna be a long haul, but we're gonna be okay, we're gonna get this. I'm like, okay, we can do this, we can do this. Back to motivation. I had 2 blood transfusions, he had 2 blood transfusions. He was there for 95 days. The doctor came to see me one day, and this NICU was set up with the sick baby side and the well baby side. Sick baby side was where I was and where he was, and I saw so many parents lose kids in the NICU, especially people with twins, and I just knew that it was going to be hard if that was what was going to happen. I really had a goal of getting him to that well baby side. Doctor said, okay, I have something I need to talk to you about. We've diagnosed him with chronic lung disease, and we're going to put him on a ventilator tomorrow. Babies don't come off the ventilator. This was 23 years ago. So I say, okay, What are we going to do? It's not up to you. It's up to Nick. Oh, I don't think so. And I'm like, where's the husband now? We need to fire somebody. So Grandma calls and says, our church is having a healing ministry tonight. Can you come? I'm like, yeah. And I tell her the whole story. Bring a picture of Nick. I say, okay. So we go to the church, go in there. It's giant church. People are doing all kinds of weird things with their hands and stuff. And I'm like, okay, whatever. There's a healing ministry. There's a special pastor from California coming. He gets up on stage, and he's beautiful. He's 6'6". He's loud. He's dynamic. And I'm looking at him with my little baby bird picture, and he starts out saying, I was a preemie who had chronic lung disease. And I'm like, okay, all right. I got some hope here. So we get through the whole service. He's talking about believing in healing and receiving healing, and I'm just trying to fast forward. How do I do it? What do I got to do? And he tells a story about when he had asthma and he had passed out, started turning blue. And he was laying on his ground, and his mom was this big prayer warrior, and she runs up to him, and she puts her hands on his chest, and she says, I believe and I receive, I believe and I receive, I believe and I receive healing. And he sat up and asked for some food. And he said that was the end of his asthma. I was like, okay, this is in the back of my mind. There's a line up to go and see him at the end of the service, so I stand in line with my little baby bird boy picture, and I go up there, and one thing he said during this, though, that the ultimate healing is to be absent from the body. I was like, okay, then you're not suffering anymore. And I'm remembering the pictures, the needles, the CPAP, the having to go on the ventilator, the little guy is just struggling, still only a few pounds. And so I stand up there and I said, hi, this is a picture of my preemie who has chronic lung disease. I don't want the ultimate healing. I don't want it. I don't want him to be gone. I want him to walk the earth. And he just looked at me, and it was like that hard eyes thing, and he just looked and he saw into me, and he had all these other people come around, and they were saying things I don't remember because I was crying so hard. And he said, look, what I want you to do is go to him right now with this hope, and you write me a letter when he is a great man one day. And I said, okay. And I get in the car, and I thought, I'm going to do this. I am full of hope, but I don't even know what I'm doing, but I can't do it. I can do it. No, I can't. Can you do this? So far, you've done pretty well. It's like, okay. So I get in the car, and I go as fast as I possibly can to the hospital, up on the curb, hazard lights on, go running up the stairs to the hospital, open up the doors to the NICU, open up his little thing, stick my hand on there, and I go, I believe and I receive, I believe and I receive, I believe and I receive. And I look over, and the nurse is like, oh, she's been drinking. I'm like, oh, it's cool. I'm cool. I'll see you tomorrow. I leave, go home. I tell the husband the whole story. He's crying. I'm still feeling really a lot of hope. In the morning, it felt like Christmas morning. I was like, I feel like this worked. I can't wait to get back to the hospital, Screw that ventilator. Drive as fast as I can, up on the curb, hazard lights, go running up, open up the door, and he's gone. He's gone. And I look over, I go, oh no. And the nurse says, nay, he's on the well baby side. So I go over there, and there he is. And he's just looking at me. He looks kind of chunky. And he's just got a little whiff of oxygen. And I had that moment with him, that hard eyes. Nick is almost 6 feet tall. He's getting a master's degree at the University of Utah. He is a great man walking on this earth, and that pastor got that letter. I also went on to have 2 more children, one of which is here, and I learned to share because they were daughters that are my same size.
All right, well, it's become now a tradition, so daughter, where are you? There she is! I was gonna go Nick, Jack, Nick. I forgot to ask this earlier, but how many of you are here at Story Night for the first time? Oh, wow, good number of you. Welcome. So one of my heart eyes list, I guess, the things that I have on my list that I have hard eyes for, and hopefully those of you who are here for the first time can develop this too, is actually for this organization, Story Night. Yeah, it's and tonight is a little special because it was March 2016 that I hosted my first show at Story Night. So tonight is the beginning of my 10th year, which is crazy to say. In fact, I was just talking to our event planner here at Jump, and we were looking out the window and we were like, yeah, that building wasn't there, and the Arthur wasn't there, and actually, when we started our show here at Jump, even the Simplot office building wasn't there. That's how, you had to climb through the mud and jump over a fence to get in here. And the only thing here was Story Night, really. So I've hosted at that first show. I was at the El Cora Shriners Temple, and then from there we went to the Old Idaho Penitentiary. I've hosted at Meridian Speedway. None of you were at that show. I hosted at the train depot, hosted at the just recently at the Idaho Botanical Garden. During the pandemic, we were scheduled the March of that year. So March is a big month, apparently. March of 2020, a week before the show, we had to cancel getting together in this room. And so but Story Night didn't stop. We did what we called Story Webinite, and we did a live stream which went out of my living room. And so I hosted that, and then the next year we were done with my living room, and we got a little sound stage on the west end of Boise, and we became kind of a TV show. There was a wall at the back that had monitors where I could see 300 computer screen feeds. So our audience was all faces along that screen. The only people in the room were the featured storytellers. Our slammers had to be virtual. But one of the things we did in that show, in the April show, all the shows we based on game shows to make it more interactive. So we had Family Feud and Wheel of Fortune. And my favorite, I think, was To Tell the Truth. So each of the featured storytellers, there was one storyteller, and then we had two imposters, and they all three told the first part, then someone else got up, told the middle, and then another person, in fact, Patty's here, she was one of our imposters, and then told the third story, and then the audience had to vote on who the story actually belonged to. Well, this is now 5 years ago, and I'm looking at our themes, and I'm seeing, winking eye with tongue out. That sounds like a show we should mess around with. So we're going to do the To Tell the Truth format next month. We'll have 3 featured storytellers telling their winking eye with tongue out story, but 2 of them will be imposters, and members of our audience will get to ask some questions to see if they can find out who the story actually belongs to. But I think what will be new this year is we'll have live slammers in the show, but for the first time ever in Story Night history, so you can start thinking, the slammers have the choice of whether they want to tell a true story or a fake story. Dun, dun, dun! Thank you, yes. Very good. So be sure those tickets are available now for Winking Eye with Tongue Out. Be sure to get that. And we have some really fun featured storytellers coming in. Some of them have been storytellers with us before. Some of them are brand new. Let's bring up a slammer now. Now tonight, though, this has to be a true story. You can't make it up. And I can't help but notice that these heart eye slammer stories have all been from women. Not sure what that means. So maybe we can find a person of another gender who has love in their life. Not this one, I don't think. She's passing off the baton tonight. She's our volunteer coordinator. Well, I assume so, because she's the only Natalia I know. So, Natalia, if you put your name in, you got drawn.
All right, so I'm driving south in Pocatello on that main highway, that north-south highway, and it's kind of cold. It's kind of snowy, like it snowed maybe a couple days ago. It's in March. It's March 8th. And I'm driving from the casino in Pocatello down to the ISU. And my good friend's in the passenger seat. And I'm driving along, and it's really quiet in the car. And all of a sudden, I just feel my heart just drop. And I feel the pedal drop. And I say, I need some assistance here.
We spared no expense, folks. The timing is so precise.
And I say, shoot, not really. I'm running out of gas. And I feel the drop of the car, and just at that point, rolling on momentum. And I'm like, we gotta pull over. And luckily, there's not much traffic in Pocatello. And I put my blinker on, and I kind of drift off to the side into the shoulder and kind of land on the side there. And we're on our way to a conference. I'm driving my good friend, and she is like, this is her conference that she's going to. And we're at the start of this road trip, going to Pocatello first for this conference, and then going to Colorado, then to New Mexico. And this is like the second day. And I've never run out of gas before. I'm like, oh my God. And we like look on our phones, like, okay, like the nearest gas station is like 40-minute walk away. We can't really get like an Uber in this part of Idaho. And so we bundle up, we put on all of our gear, we change our shoes, and we get out, and we make the journey along the shoulder, and we go. But first we're kind of going arm in arm. We're like, all right, we got this. And then we think, all right, it'd be safer to go single file, because we're all about like thinking about safety. So at the farthest end of the shoulder, and we walk, and we begin our walk, and it's cold, and kind of that wind that hits like eastern Idaho is like really hitting us. And we're probably walking for about 20 minutes, and like we're kind of like late for this conference. And we kind of look ahead, and we see that the highway is like our shoulder is kind of disappearing, and we see that it kind of narrows out into this like little overpass, and like we don't really see anything. We're like, okay, we're gonna have to like cross that. And like, cars are going by, not very often, but they're there. It's really fast, and it's freaky on the nervous system. And, as we're approaching this narrowing, a car pulls over. We see this truck pull right in front of us into the shoulder, right where it's about to end. And it's this big black truck. We're like, okay, this is it. And we look at the license plate, and it says maestro. We're like, oh, teacher, huh? And they flag us down. We run. We pull up, and they're like, come in. We open up the back seat, and there are two women in the front driving, and it's a woman maybe in her 50s, and then it's a woman in her 80s in the passenger seat. And it's a mother and a daughter, and they're like, do you need some help? And we're like, yes, we do, thank you. And they take us in, and we're just like looking at each other like, oh my gosh, wow, we're so lucky. And they're speaking to each other in Spanish up above, and the woman driving the daughter in her 50s, she kind of has an accent. We think they're Peruvian, and it's a nice. We feel so good. We're like, oh wow, and we realize, oh my gosh, it's March 8th, it's International Women's Day. We're like, wow, like, oh gosh, so thankful for women, right? And she said, okay, we can take you to the gas station, but I need to drop my mother off at a doctor's appointment first. Is that okay? We're like, yes, of course. And so we're in the back seat, and we drive to kind of this appointment, and she helps her mother out of the car and like walks her to, and we're just in the back seat. We're just in awe, like, wow, like what a gift. And she helps us get some gas, and we go back, and I have this great picture of my friend filling up the gas tank. It's pretty awesome, and we're like laughing about it. And just that day was a really just beautiful time, just making me feel so like just appreciation and love of just the gift of giving and of helping people in need, and for women helping each other, and like the maestro, and like that was all so beautiful. And looking back too at that trip, I remember when my heart dropped and I pulled out to the shoulder, and I felt some more emotions. I felt like this deep panic in my body and in my heart, and I thought, oh my God, like I messed this up, like I totally effed up, and I'm really afraid right now. And I remember telling my friend this, and I said, like, I'm so sorry. And I said, and she was really kind, and I said, like, thank you for not being mad. And she just like kind of like looked at me and was like, well, yeah, of course, like we're in this together, basically. And we just had a really great moment there. We're like, hey, this is a sticky situation, but we got each other's backs. And like, yeah, you should have got gas, but we're gonna be okay. And I'll say too, this friend isn't just a good friend. I honestly had been like pretty in love with her for like a long time, and now today, when we're together and we look back at this really funny moment every International Women's Day, and I say, hey, remember when? And I text her and I send her like a little heart eye, the eyes, which I send her all the time. And it's just a good moment to remember but what love really feels like and what it really looks like. So shout out to Beth Norton. Yes.
I had a road emergency on I-84 late at night in the dark, and basically one of my tires blew out, and I would have to realize I was going to have to walk back to the previous exit and look for a phone because it was pre-cell phone days. The only thing I had in my car that I found was a white sheet. So I wrapped myself in a white sheet. No one stopped for me. Nobody. And now a message from our season sponsor. Now, I don't know if you remember this, if we did this before with you, EL, but I asked our musician to accompany me on this in the style of insurance.
In the style of insurance, you say?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely need insurance. Sounds a little foreboding. Okay, you know that tree fort moment? That one when you wander into a random venue to avoid a line somewhere else and suddenly you're texting friends, drop everything, Neurolux now. Most employee benefits are the opposite of that feeling. They're the headliner you waited 2 hours for who phones it in. I mean, mystery fees, denials, deductibles, and out-of-pocket costs only Taylor Swift can afford, and the ever-present, sorry, that's not covered. Cringe face emoji. At Keenly, we think your benefits deserve the same energy you give the things you actually love. All right, we need to go a little more up-tempo with this part. At Keenly, we think your benefits deserve the same energy you give the things you actually love. We create plans rooted in Idaho, meant for the people who live here. Your employees deserve a team fluent in insurance jargon, so nobody's stress Googling prior authorization at midnight. Insurance is probably not often viewed with hard eyes. We think it should be. Keenly. Smart benefits, worth obsessing over. I like it. You should write a song, an insurance song.
It would start off very droll like that, like I did, but then it would get happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, very good, unless you're on Medicaid. Okay, let's get a slammer up here quick. Because Story Night doesn't do politics. We have lots of people in here. That's super exciting. Let's see who we can get up here on our stage. All right. I believe we are bringing up Karen Smith. Yes? All right. She's all the way back there. Boise's such a small world, isn't it? Just met last night.
Karen Smith's actually my witness protection name, so I'm sticking with that. I'm terrified, but I want to tell you about a love experience that was perhaps way more terrifying than this. I have 4 kids, lived in Idaho all their lives. The first 3 got married, like outdoors at the Rose Garden, in the snow at McCall. Just kind of barefooted in the backyard. My 4th daughter calls me from Texas and says, Rohit and I have decided to get married, and that means a great big giant Indian wedding, because his family is all from India. And she said, Mom, you're a guitar teacher. We think it would be really cool if you would play sitar for the Sanji. Because that's one of them, it goes on for several days. This is all new stuff for me, right? I knew nothing about it. So I said, why not? I'll give it a shot. They said, could you please play? That would be so cool. It would be such like a wonderful thing if you could do that. So they're having this big wedding in Texas, and I'm in Boise, and I couldn't find a sitar, just real handy, in the music stores. And I found a teacher in Berkeley who sold sitars and could give me some tips via video how to play it. And it comes in the mail, and it's this thing that's bigger than my husband, and has 22 strings that have to be tuned. So 3 months later, I had those strings tuned. I worked on it. And then I thought, well, I don't want to just like pop off Norwegian wood or something lame like that. I really want to study classical Indian music so that I do not insult all these people because, they're from India, right? And so I get a book to start reading about it while I'm learning. And it turns out they have this thing, like in Western music, you have like 8 modes that are kind of really cool things. If you're a real music nerd, you learn those 8 modes of different sets of notes. You learn major and minor scales, of course. But in Indian music, they have this thing called ragas. And ragas are a set of notes that goes up the scale and a different set that comes down. And they have like hundreds of them. And hundreds of them apply to different situations, like if you're playing in the morning, you play one raga. If you're playing in the evening, there's a set of ragas. If you're playing for a wedding in the evening, there's a set of ragas. If you're playing for Sangeet at noon. So there are many, many things that are appropriate or not appropriate. Also, they don't have written down songs. You're supposed to make stuff up. But it needs to be within the parameters of these ragas. So after I struggled with getting all these things tuned, I learned you really only have to play on 2 strings, so that part isn't too bad, but it better be an appropriate raga or you're going to be in major trouble with real Indian people. So I spent a lot of time learning those ragas, and I got to that wedding, I'm scared out of my mind. And the main thing that you have to be is in tune. Well, this is like this really noisy venue. So I sort of tuned. And I did my best, and I did okay. And I found out like one of my strings went out of tune like very quickly as I started playing. But the cool thing about a sitar is if you push the string and bend it, it goes, and you can get it to the note you need. And so that was like really wonderful to have known that right then, because I really needed it that night. But anyway, I made it through. The biggest applause that was a woman in her 60s could get up off the floor after assuming that pose. Everybody was really impressed with that. And you know, the people were so lovely. They said, I immediately knew that was Rag Yaman, and that's my favorite. And some of these people had actually played it and said how hard it was, and they were really impressed that I really tried. But the most, they were so kind. But the most wonderful thing about the whole experience is it brought me together with, not only at that sort of a wedding, it's not just a joining of a couple and the love that comes with that. It's the joining of families. And I had to completely meet this whole new family that I'd only met maybe twice. They'd come to Idaho and had a pretty big laugh when we suggested the wedding should be at Bergdorf. And the mother-in-law says, I would do anything for your daughter, but this will not do. And so anyway, it was this massive, wonderful wedding. But what I really learned is in the culture that is a joining not of just of a couple and of families, but also of cultures and of villages. And I really felt over that week-long adventure in Texas, out in the hill country of Texas with the giant Indian wedding, I felt love on a much bigger scale than I had ever really experienced before. And so it not only started with love for my daughter, but it really ended up with love for a whole community that I was joined to.
Thank you, Karen, or whoever you are. We can also preserve your special name on the release as well, if you want to keep that. Can you imagine walk hand in hand with me accompanied by sitar? That would be amazing. All right, let's get one last slammer, if we can multitask over there. Can you run the slammer box up this way? I think my only sitar experience was unintentional. I was in a production of Oklahoma, and it sounded like there was a sitar in the violin section. Okay. Oh. Is this Welsh? What do you think this says? No, who can read? What do you think? Oh, no, we'll try. Oh, it is? It's your son. It's Joaquin. Is that right? Did you put your name in? Yeah, come on up here. We got a Hard Eyes story. Sorry, I was gonna say sequin, which I didn't think was right.
It's just cursive, bro.
Yeah, I get it. They don't teach cursive anymore. I never learned it.
Actually, you gotta come by my house. I'd like to say thank you for being able to close this out. The thing that I am going to talk about is my love for contact sports, like big wrestling, boxing, stuff like that. So a couple of years ago, back in, I think it was 2020, my mom, when we were living in New Mexico, she used to take us to this pump track. And every single time that we went to the pump track, we would go pretty fast, then we'd just jump off. One day, I kind of messed up. I was going pretty fast, and I crashed really hard. I absolutely ate it. Oh, whoops, sorry, I'm just putting this down. And I remember being a little stunned and my mom coming down and picking me up. And when we were getting back to the car, there was people nearby and they said, "Little man, you are a fighter." And that stuck with me ever since that happened. And last year, I was looking at like people to be inspired by, to draw. And I found these awesome people from Mexico to draw. And I researched more into it, and I figured out that they were fighters, MMA fighters. The names were Cain Velasquez, Tony Ferguson, and Brendan Moreno. I got really inspired, and I said, well, why not? Let's do wrestling this year. Let's give it a shot. But a part of that was I got rid of all my long hair. My hair was down here near my elbows, and I shaved it all off, and I now have this little buzz now. And, you know, it's kind of been a lame excuse for a buzz, but, you know, it works for the time being. And I remember I did it, and I kind of felt like maybe this isn't for me for the first week and a half. And it's because the teacher was really weird. Like the teacher was really weird. You know, we got this guy named Dean. He's like 6 foot tall, and for some reason his gut was as hard as concrete. So he would do these moves on me, and you know, just this concrete gut, and I was like, dang. He used to call me Dummyo because of an old movie. I forgot which one it was. And I remember I was so nervous for my first official wrestling match. You know, I was warming myself up. I was talking to myself, and I was like, if I lose this first one, that's not going to look good on me. And in the second round, I ended up pinning the dude. And I was really happy. And the second that the referee, he grabbed my wrist, and he pulled up my arm like this. And that's right there when I had my hard eyes. So I was like, this is awesome. This is awesome. And ever since then, for the wrestling season, I went 10-0. And it all went to a halt when I went to city. I beat the first dude. I actually beat him like the first 30 seconds. It was a guy from North. And no surprise there. And and the round after that, I was going up against I'm not gonna say who, but he was taller than me, and he had around 3 inches of reach on me. And I didn't know how that match would play out, you know, since I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna try my best, and no matter if I win or lose, I just wanna really have fun. I wanna push myself. And he won, of course, I'm gonna be honest, he won. He won to 15-13. And I kind of realized that, you know, no matter how good you can be during the season or how good you can think of yourself, I really realized that you will lose eventually. And I still had the hard eyes, and I beat the other dude for 3rd place and 4th place, and I lost horribly for the 3rd and 4th. I lost horribly for the 3rd and 4th. So I got 4th place my first year, and I finished off the season going 12-2. And ever since then, I just kept thinking to myself, this is an awesome sport. I want to continue to do this, and I have. I convinced my mom to buy me boxing gloves and MMA gloves, and sometimes after school on Friday, I take my friends and I teach them. I teach them the stuff that I learned, and you know, we practice, we spar, And I thought that it was a great experience, and that was my Hard Eyes experience.
All right, just a reminder that, oh, by the way, also like concrete. Amazing. Just a reminder that EL's going to be out here with some stuff for you to look at. And thank you for being here. This is where we cue the music, please. Stories come from the land as well as its people, and I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Shoshone-Bannock people. Story Night is supported by public funding for the arts through the Idaho Commission on the Arts, the Idaho Legislature, and the National Endowment for the Arts. We also receive funding from the Boise Department of Arts and History. Remember, you can listen to podcasts from all our shows or see these flagship shows on our YouTube channel. We also have a radio show on Radio Boise the Sunday before our live show on Stray Theater, and that runs from 5:30 to 6 o'clock right there on Radio Boise. Thank you to our crew technical director, podcast and video engineer, Stephen Baldessare, who, by the way, has also been here all these 10 years that I have. I appreciate that so much. Thank you to our guest musician, E.L. Anderson. Thank you to our photographer, Christine Birkenbein, fresh off of nonstop Treefort. Thank you to our volunteers and our volunteer coordinator, Natalia DiJosia, along with our upcoming coordinator, Sean Browning, who's taking over next month. Thank you to our board of directors. Thank you to our story subscribers. Thank you to Jump and the crew here for hosting us. Remember to join us on March 31st for our last show in this season of Emojis, Winking Eye with Tongue Out. Tickets available now. Story Night. Story, good night. Beginning, middle, now at the end. This is our little theme tune. Authentic, inspiring, spontaneous. So thank you. You shared your stories and you really listened. Bye-bye. I may have come here as a stranger, but now I'm leaving as a friend. And tonight we learned, eventually you will lose. And so the stories never end. Good night. We'll see you next month. Keep those hard eyes glowing.